Hey everybody, it's Jaishree from JaishreeYoga.com and the Soul Mapping Matrix.
And Kalani Das.
And our very favorite and special guest, Jonathan Glass. And Baby Elephant. And Narayani Lev. Welcome to Rise of the Sacred Sovereign, Day 19.
Day 19.
Of a 21.
Day 19.
Day 19.
Day 19.
This is a 21-day challenge that we have been showing up with you, and you are all welcome to write in any comments or questions. This is a conversation geared towards the awakening individual as part of a great awakening in the collective. And we just use that term, Great Awakening, because so much is happening. It's like the veil has come down in a lot of ways in 2020. And now as we move into 2021 with this awesome, abundant, positive, and yet also sometimes scary and negative polarity showing up, we can continue to have the conversation about how we're evolving and how our consciousness is awakening. So we are so grateful to have our dear friend Jonathan Glass of the Healing Essence Center in Concord, Mass. here. He's also an author, an acupuncturist, an Ayurveda doctor, a father, a husband, and a dear, dear God brother. We love you. We love you so much that we hang out, and we have been some of the only, close people hanging out so physically during this time. But we're super grateful to be here. And Narayani might be coming out with some freestyling or interpretive dance, singing.
Her new book.
Her new book. By the way, Jonathan is
her clothing line.
Her perfume, her natural.
Her clothing line.
Yeah. In your line of that.
Oh my gosh. Jonathan is the creator of Jiva Atma energy healing, which is an incredibly beautiful, powerful, and grounded healing work that he has shared with our Soul Culture Yoga School teacher training and over the years retreats and workshops, and it's really incredible. And I know you've been doing a lot of remote work since COVID and this past year. So we actually wanted to tune in and talk about how we're receiving information and how we're healing, because there's a lot of healing that's going to be needed now. Yeah, especially with, the psychological and emotional of what's been happening.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the language and the landscape. And so the language is our own internal, how we make sense of the world and how we're talking about it and sharing meaning and making meaning, which is so important to embody and live in the space that we want to live in, the frequency that we want to live in. And then there's the landscape, which is what's happening externally, and we always kind of come back to the landscape is always changing. So, how are we meeting that? What language are we speaking? So I'd really love, I think both of us would really love, and I'm sure everyone here would love to hear what you're seeing in the landscape right now of what's been going on when we're talking about information overload and what's happening. And then also,
by the way,
the language of healing in that landscape right now on the planet.
And today it might be a little bit hard to respond to your questions and comments, but we will get to them. So tell us a little bit, Jonathan, anything you want to share in your wisdom about that information overload, how we're processing and healing individually and maybe collectively.
Well, I think, one thing that comes to mind is there's a certain aspect that truth is always truth, and that the problems of existence are pretty much, in principle, the same problems. They're just showing up in different ways at different times and different degrees of intensity at different times throughout history. And the understanding of what the cause of the problems are at some points in history that awareness is very low, and at some points the awareness becomes more more realized. I'll wait, no problem.
You're
Okay.
good.
So,
You're
you know, see, problems come and problems
Right.
go. You know, so it's the same problem, but right now we're obviously at a one of those times where there's sort of a meeting of significant problems and significant reaction and raising of awareness, and the fallout from that as well.
Right.
So, you know, in one sense, the solution is always the same. But the challenge to connecting to the solution, you could argue, is more intense right now. Having said that, when the problem becomes really clear, sometimes that inspires us to go deeper.
Right.
If the problems don't seem to be there, then we can become quite aloof or complacent. In the Vedic literatures, what do they say the problems are? And they actually say birth, death, disease, and old age.
Yeah.
You know, so these problems are still there. We're all, and then the fear of losing something, the fear of death, the fear of disease, the fear of losing loved ones. This has been a problem since the beginning of time. It's always been a problem in this world. But now it's sort of in our face. It reminds me of when I went to India the first time, and I'm walking down the beach, and I see a dead body floating on the ocean. A beautiful beach.
Incredible.
And never in a million years would I have never ever imagined seeing something like that in America.
Right.
But in India, it's right there.
Right. And
You know, and so much of the raw aspects of life are right there in different cultures. But in America, we typically don't see that. So now we're seeing things in America that many of us thought would never happen, and that would only happen in what we would identify, I don't know what the right word is, but the so-called third world country. This is how we would identify. So now we're seeing things in America that are happening on that level. So it's really quite scary at times, and confusing, and disturbing. So, but the problems have always been there. They're just, it's like a detoxification. It's coming out. It's becoming, we're seeing everything that's been brewing under the surface for a very long time, and coming and going like waves and cycles. So the solution in one sense is still the same, you know, and ultimately it's love, but it's coming to how can we connect to ourselves, how can we connect to others, how can we connect to who we are as spiritual beings, how can we connect in truth to the divine. I mean, these are all part of the solution of the material predicament.
Yes.
I mean, this is the solution to the material predicament. And there's different ways of doing that. And I think you had mentioned part of the issue with the overstimulation, for example, of media. I mean, we can be on our phones 24 hours a day seeing the new news coming in, depending on what feed or what chat you're on or whatever. There's always something new. So that's an added dimension of challenge, because you know, it used to be where you had to go to your house and sit down and listen to the radio.
Right.
Or before that, it was listen to your neighbor.
Yeah.
They heard something.
Yes.
And then it was a television.
Yes.
And now it's the computer. Now it's the phone. So you can be connected to this information 24 hours a day. And that has its, you know, challenging and imbalancing effects also, which are really challenging. So it's not that, I don't even know where my phone is, but it's not that it's an inherently evil thing. Just like money can be used for positive things, just like fire can be used to cook a wonderful meal, or it can destroy a house.
Absolutely.
So wireless technology can be used, can really, really be disturbing if it's not used mindfully, and if we don't learn how to manage it. It's like a cell phone is like our mind. If we don't learn how to manage our mind, then we're going to be completely disturbed by our phone.
Oh, I love that.
So, that makes me think of what kind of related to what your question was.
Yes. And I love what you say so beautifully also about how everything is showing up. I think so many of us are always, if you will, we're in our phones, we're in our lives, we're always trying to unplug, but right now it's like how in Bhakti Yoga they talk about the churning of the ocean. Like if you're going to make a soup or you're going to boil something down, make a something, that the toxicities are also going to come up, right? And they're going to bubble and they're going to come to the top. And then also, the impurities have to go and expel out before we can get to the nectar. And I remember you teaching a class, we were just maybe in teacher training or something, many awesome classes, and we're talking about how we'd be looking down at our phones all the time and the tightening of the muscles. Now it's almost like the psychic landscape is so thick with information actually that it's actually very hard to filter out. And so I wonder, since the beginning of COVID or 2020, if you found in your practice, what are some of the toxicities that are different that are coming up in folks, or is it, as you say, really just the same stuff?
Well, I think it's coming from the same thing, which is ultimately fear. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. The Chinese say that fear is being in the presence of the unknown.
That is exciting. I'm just moving this a little bit more on you, actually.
So fear is being in the presence of the unknown, and there's a lot of unknowns right now.
Right.
There's a tremendous, we've been lulled out of our, trust in the day-to-day activities, even though, you speak to many people that before COVID, the pace of their life was so intense, was so fast, that when we look back, the pace of my life has slowed down to a significant degree. It's busy now, but it's still slower than it was. There was this sort of crazy pace of life, which I think people were just accepting as reality. And it was almost like the busier and crazier you were, supposedly the better life was. That's true for a lot of people. Maybe not for everybody, but that seemed to be a lot of people that I've talked to. One thing they're appreciating in some ways, it's very paradoxical and mixed, but their pace of their life is slowed down.
Absolutely.
The connection that they're having with family members and close friends might in some ways be better for some people. In some ways. But then again, there's this underlying current of extreme anxiety, extreme fear. And then we have not only the fear of what's happening, but the fear of what people who disagree with you about what's happening.
Right. Yeah.
And having, there's a lot of fear around communicating with somebody and even saying that I think this way and you think this way. And of course, in the beginning, it was like when we first started hearing people, I defriended this one and that one, it seemed crazy, but now it's common.
Right.
Everybody's defriending everybody. And, there's something to be said for, connecting with people that you connect with and that you think similarly to. But there's also something to be said for how does humanity move forward when, we have different views. And there's many people who are on the fence. They say they think this, but they're wondering about that. Or somebody over here is like, I think this, I believe this, but I'm kind of doubting and I'm wondering about that over there. So there's this whole sort of gray area, and that's scary too, because it means we have to maybe let go of some belief systems or things that we felt very secure in, thinking life was about, or this is my reality, this is my belief, this is who I am, and then all of a sudden those things are being shaken up. So that's where, no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter what your external beliefs are, in terms of what's happening in society and the culture or in the politics, or in the government or in this country or with COVID or with vaccines or whatever, no matter what you believe, we're still human beings
Yes.
who I believe have souls,
Mm-hmm.
and that, you know, a way to connect truly is to do whatever you can do to connect to that essence in ourselves, you know, and then for some, and that might also mean connecting with the divine.
Yes.
So, you know, that doesn't require that you believe in a vaccine or don't believe in a vaccine.
Right.
That doesn't require that you voted for this person or that person. And part of the issue is that I think when we forget that we're souls and we only identify with this view or that view, then it's a really crazy scene. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't have differences, and it doesn't mean we can't, you know, discuss it and argue about it and deal with it and deal with the challenges. But it does mean that we're really, really missing out on a major point of oneness with all living beings. If we forget that one point that we're all souls on a journey, then it becomes really miserable and it becomes dangerous.
I remember when we were talking with Catherine, your beautiful wife and partner in all, amazing healer, this summer, and we did something like this together, conversation outside, and we were talking about education, and you know, there is a sort of a re-education that's going to need to happen because, for example, the long-term effects for children right now who are not seeing faces, thus not learning that emotional intelligence and behavior and mirroring, and also all adults. I mean, we're always trying to remember our essence, and as you say, the soul essence of who we are, the culture that we're creating, this divisiveness is going to have effects, and it's. And I was reading today a midwife I know. It was awesome. She was saying, you know, how there's now a stigma, of course, being attached to those who either had the disease, the COVID-19 disease, or and then there's the stigma of, you know, getting the vax or not, and it's actually expanding in a way that it's not just going to automatically get better. It was never probably going to get better with one president or another, although there was hope for both, and probably still is for both sides. It was more, I think, a consciousness issue. And so how will we re-educate, or what do you think? I mean, I love what you say about the soul, and and it's so clear that, like, having some universal guiding principles, that's why we call it bridge work. We love the bridge building, you know, between the ends of the spectrum. You know, what can some of us focus on, would you say, even at home or in our families, to help this process of reconnection?
It's incredible. I mean, you were asking me to, like, what I've been gauging a lot on my morning walks, because I've been, ever since this began last March, when I started not working for a couple months there, or not seeing people in person,
all the time.
I was taking my dog for a walk early in the morning, and sometimes going for 1 or 2 hours. And it's been really interesting to see how people are interacting on those walks.
Yeah.
And how it's changed, and how there were times when people were so friendly, so open, and big smiles. And then there were phases where, you know, okay, the new mask mandate, you know, first it was 6 feet, and if it's not 6 feet, it's fine. And a lot of people were really okay with that. And then people started walking a little further apart. And then the mask came on, and then people became very serious, and they looked ahead. And you know, it was very interesting, and then that sort of eased up again. People were friendlier again once they realized, okay, if it's 6 feet, I don't have to wear a mask, and now they're mandating masks. So there's a lot of, and the problem with the mask too, you can't see a smile,
Right.
and it's only the eyes, and I see a lot of fear. And then I have to wonder, okay, is that projection? Is that my projection onto that person? Are they scared of me? Am I, you know, what's going on here? So that's a very unfortunate and challenge right now when you can't see someone's face if they're smiling, and you can't read them. And all you can do is look at their eyes. And a lot of times when people look at each other's eyes without seeing their face, it's kind of natural with a human being. There's oftentimes an element of fear.
Yes.
And so then the person reads that there's fear. That person's fearing or judging or whatever. So fear creates a lot of separation.
Absolutely.
And I see, and this is a big part of the problem. Because of the fear, when people are scared, a lot of knee-jerk reactions happen. And a lot of words come out very quickly. A lot of judgments are made. A lot of programming comes out. A lot of judgments come out very quickly. So it's a really big problem.
Yes.
A really big
It's
problem.
actually, yes.
It's a huge problem. So that's what it comes down to again, and there's just to finish, is what can we do to connect deeper than what we're seeing on the surface? Because if I can't walk down the street and look at someone in the eye with at least kindness or compassion, then things will continue to dissolve.
Right.
And maybe it has to for a while until we all wake up and say, hey, this is not really what we are wanting.
So the Krishna factor, the divine factor, the guru factor, the quality of divinity, and all those words are, you know, could even be triggers for some, and that's okay, because that's part of that re-education, that re-emerging as, you know, unique souls that are part and parcel of everything that is good, all of us. That's the conversation, you know, our individual experience of growing into a more advanced, i.e. healthier, happier collective. This is also another K word we call Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and confusion. And I know that besides being an amazing healer and Ayurveda doctor, you're also a devotee who loves studying the self-realization of the soul and through an understanding of Krishna. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why and how that might be an awesome point of even universal healing?
Sure. Well, it comes back to, you know, again, looking at what are the problems of life. And, you know, none of us, unless we're, you know, really wanting to end our life for some sad reason, most of us don't really want to die.
No.
You know, and so my teacher used to say that the reason we don't want to die is because our nature, our true nature, is eternal, or ever existent, and that's the soul. And in the Vedic culture, or the yogic culture, they call it the Atma. You know, the Atma is the self, and it's that spark that illuminates the body. And you know, without having at least some. And it has nothing to do with religion.
Right.
But it has something to do with consciousness, awareness, and appreciation of there's some vital spark that illuminates us.
Yeah.
And whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Soul, Atma, consciousness, you know, light, particle of love, doesn't matter what you call it, obviously. But if we can agree that we all have that spark, I mean, if you've ever been around somebody who died, it's like they're here 1 second, and as soon as they're gone, they're gone. The body, it's just a completely different encasement. I mean, that the body, they have left the body. There's there's in my understand, with my awareness, there's no doubt. Not everybody accepts that, but I think that, you know, as a culture, if we can raise our awareness to a higher level of appreciation, that there's some kind of conscious spark within all living beings, and on that level we are equal.
Yeah.
We're equal.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the oneness is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I will never be a professional basketball player. Mm-hmm. I don't get the height. Mm-hmm. But for me to say that I'm a professional basketball player just because I want to say that, mm-hmm. you know, it's just not it. We all have our physical, mental, emotional limitations and gifts. Right. And so I think, you know, the way that we live our life is we make the best of our gifts. Mm-hmm. We are honest about our limitations, mm-hmm. but then we go deeper and recognize the soul and recognize the soul connection with the soul of all things. Beautiful. So this is, you know, what I think, but it's also a state of consciousness. Knowledge is helpful, mm-hmm. but how do we do that? We do that through some kind of, we call it yoga. Yeah. You know, some kind of practice that helps take us deeper. Yeah. and helps us to awaken via consciousness to a deeper part of ourselves and who we are. And, you know, this has always been from the sages of the East, and in all true bona fide spiritual traditions, it's always been the solution. Right. And the problems have always been the same. Mm-hmm. You know, the problem is, you know, there's the esoteric spirit, you know, or practitioner, mm-hmm. and there's the exoteric. So somebody who identifies with, you know, I'm Hindu, I'm Jewish, I'm this, I'm that, then it's an external thing, mm-hmm. because they're not connecting to what is the actual teachings, the deepest teachings of their tradition. So then they identify themselves as that, and they fight, and my way is better than your way, and you know, it's the same game that's been going on forever, right?
Yes, it is.
For gazillions of years on the planet. Yeah. And that's why religion gets a bad name, too.
Right.
Because, you know, I'm a this and you're a that, so therefore what I am is better than what you are.
Right. There is no hierarchy when it comes to the soul.
There's no hierarchy when it comes to the soul.
You know.
Because love is love.
Love is love. And that brings it back to your first sharings this evening, was that truth is one. Like a truth. The quality of water is wet, you know, or mm-hmm. liquidity, you know, the quality of ice is cold, and these are the quality of humanity. We say is eternal, conscious, and blissful Satya Ananda, but you could just say love. And on that spectrum, it could just be so simple: love and fear, love and fear. Mm-hmm. If this book, Soul Ascension, that I wrote in mm-hmm. last year, there's this line in it, and I say, if you could see your soul from afar, like the mm-hmm. blueprint or the map of your soul, my God, what power we would mm-hmm. have, right? Mm-hmm. And the sages and the mystics, the ones and the poets and the ones that are channeling these beautiful truths, and whether it becomes a book or whether it becomes a series, a show, like Shakespeare, or whether it becomes however the channeling of genius is put out into the world, it's always truth being respoken and revealed in a different language. And this up level seems to be about taking what is in the landscape and re-emerging with the qualities that are not different but the same in love. And Ayurveda and medicine, these are just re-emerging and respoken tools that are eternal. Mm-hmm. The soul is eternal.
I think one of the beautiful things too is if we begin to come from that place, because you had asked before about how do we deal with, you know, the world, right, and all the information that's coming. If we can connect to that place even a little, then we can begin to see other things from a different perspective and not be as disturbed and not be as fearful.
Does fear help us? I've heard in various things, stress can be good, right? I love hearing Prabhu and Prabhu talk about stress and how, the possibility and energy of making things happen, how Agni builds and that Pitta is like, there's possibility in creation. But so much of it is overwhelming. So I think, how is fear good for us?
Well, it's interesting because there's actually even a story that's related to that, which I won't go into here. But the point is that fear is meant to be beneficial in some ways. So there's, fear can get a bad rap, right? But fear is meant to wake us up.
Right. Like if there's a tiger in the room.
There's a tiger in a room. Or if we realize, okay, life is getting shorter. Okay, I'm over 50. Okay, I'm 60 now. So it's not that I'm supposed to be fearful all the time. But if a thought comes, wow, I don't have that many more years to go. And maybe you could call that a little bit of fear. Like, I don't want to miss out on fulfilling what I'm here to do. You could call that fear. Yeah. And that can be inspiring. If we use fear to inspire us, the problem is that if fear can also be overwhelming. And in Chinese medicine, the water element is fear. It's fear is being in the presence of the unknown, right? So when your water is always fluid and moving, but fear can show up in different ways. One way is it can be like a frozen water. If we're frozen in fear, then we can't take action.
Yes.
But if we're flowing, and if we use fear to help us flow and move forward, then it's a positive thing. But what happens is that when the water becomes stagnant, like a stagnant, polluted pond, then we're fearful and stagnant, and our thoughts become stinky and judgmental and critical and fearful, and we become stuck in a swamp of our own consciousness. So this is not a good use of fear. If we can, think of fear like a flowing river. And sometimes it rises over rocks, and sometimes it gets very rough, and sometimes it's very calm. And that can help us carry us and move us forward. Because life is temporary. That's the other thing, is that, most of us are so fearful of getting a virus. And who wants it? Of course, nobody wants it. But having said that, how conscious are we that, we're going to die anyway? And not that we should be fatalistic, and we're not even supposed to, even from the yogic tradition, we're not supposed to try to die prematurely. We're meant to live as long as we can,
right,
as healthy as we can, as conscious as we can, fulfill our purpose. But to walk around thinking that the only dangers are these other dangers, and not connect to the reality that life is temporary.
Yes.
It's like Don Juan. Remember Don Juan in the shaman journey to Ixtlan used to say, use death as an advisor.
Right. Death is
So if we always know that life is temporary, then we show up, and then we're standing in front of another person who sees things differently than us, and we're not terrified.
Right.
Because we can look him in the eyes and know that person's an eternal soul, and they have a different point of view, and I can stand here in my power, and if they want to speak in their power, I can handle it.
Yes.
Because it's not the biggest problem in the world. We have bigger problems than what we see around us.
This is true.
And,
this is a really important point.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, and then I want to give you the last word, of course, and I also want to come close for just a moment, and I want to check in because we lost our sound and tech guy to a 3-year-old, which is totally fair.
Happens.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to say hi and wave back and Haribol, and thank you guys for joining us. And those of you on Facebook, thank you as well. Sorry if we haven't been able to get too much into comments and questions, but we are with Jonathan Glass and having an amazing conversation. for Rise of the Sacred Sovereign, day 19. And so
awesome.
it's so awesome just to show up and have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel really blessed that we chose to be in each other's circle during this whole time, and so that we could, continue to physically be present and do this as well. But that's part of the hard thing is, our nature as souls is to serve and to be present and to connect. So hearing over and over again this mantra, not to be connected, not to talk to each other,
Social distancing.
not social distancing. It's really
I would prefer if they called it physical distancing.
right. It was so horrible to hear because, when we hear things over and over again, it becomes our mantra. Our mantra is to free our mind of the shackles, but we were really put into it. And for whatever purpose or not purpose, masking up and physically distancing will prove or not prove to be important for whatever those reasons are. I always wondered why we were going into stores and why would a mask force us to be quiet, right? Like it was, and not look at each other and not connect. And so it makes me think of how, there are these goals of life, you've done this many times, the goal of, our purpose and dharma, artha, the purpose of wealth and making a living in the material world, lust or desire, kam, and moksha being about freedom, being about liberation. And you were speaking, we're all going to die. So there must be a higher goal. And we say that goal is bhakti, which is the devotional relationship between souls. And I think that, wherever someone's spiritual practice can come in and show up, it's amazing to look to bhakti. And it always comes back to it because it's always about recognizing that eternality.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say too that, there's a mystical thing that happens is that even if I'm not necessarily feeling connected to that in myself at the moment, if I make an effort when I show up with another human being and see the divine spark in them, the paradox is even if I wasn't feeling it, all of a sudden then I feel it.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
So there's this thing that happens when we make an effort to see the spark in another person, beyond the fear, beyond the lens of fear, beyond the mask, beyond the when someone's eyes look fearful. If we can look past that and see there's a real human being in there, a real spirit in there, and that's our work.
That's our work.
That's a big part of our work is to see that, and that's in all the scriptures, whether it's the Hindu or the Jewish or the Christian. You're going to find many, many verses in other religions that describe that. And, you can be the greatest philosopher, know everything about your religion and all the history and all the sacred verses. But unless we can do that to some significant degree, then it's all yakking. Yeah. It's all talk. So it's all lip service, as they say.
Yep.
So
it's time to show up and be.
Yes, and that comes back to your sovereign.
Yes.
It is coming back to being yourself, being truthful where you're at. And yes, truthful about your beliefs, but we have to be able to, my opinion, to hold both your divine spark and you have that opinion.
Absolutely.
If we just see the other person as having an opinion, that means that all you are is an opinion.
Yep. And my wish, and thank you so much for being here. My wish is also for myself as well. Forgiveness is going to be really important because the way showers and the mystics who spoke of this time coming, they all saw it. We didn't know exactly what it would be, but it was going to show up, and it's changing us. It's changing us individually and collectively. And there are many. One of the I know we said last word, but one of the hardest things I'm hearing right now is that there's so much censorship going on, and this is something that we have to awaken to and open our eyes and ears to, because anyone, it's just like, people wonder why this time is being compared to, various times in history. But yes, the Holocaust times, and anytime leaders come in and change the collective to think a certain way, it doesn't matter why it happens. It doesn't matter what the disease is. Anytime that happens and we come up against not seeing our brethren and our people as our neighbors anymore and our souls, that's a problem, whatever it is. So we really need to open up and see that if we're not hearing all the information, or if we're not open to hearing the information, and we start labeling people something, that's really scary. It's scary to me, and it's scary that I'm hearing a lot of spiritual leaders in the like astrologers, for example, are just like, they're using astrology, which is science, to talk about, what's going on in the collective or individually. They're starting to label those people as like these insurrectionists or whatever, the what happened in the US on the Capitol, all this stuff. If we are triggered, I would my wish is that we open up to that triggering and really allow ourselves to be a little bit more empty and humble about that which we may not know. Stop, myself and included, judging so quickly, and forgive. There's a lot of folks who are spiritual that actually are very angry right now. There are a lot of spiritual folks that are judging and shaming right now, shaming and blaming folks for either having or not having, or doing or not doing. My belief is in this reconnection process of coming out of this time, we're going to need to be really forgiving also, because there's been a lot of labeling and a lot of clamping down, and
the labeling is, we're in a time of labeling, and it's a bizarre time, because in one sense there's a movement to delabel everything and anything,
and make everything homogeneous,
and everything, and you can have any kind of label that you want. But on the other hand, it's okay to label a huge group of people, that
may or may not be connecting to some truth or not. It's really
on both sides. I mean, if you voted for Trump, there's a number of people who have absolute judgments about someone who voted for Biden, for instance.
Of course.
And vice versa. People that, I heard a couple yogi friends of mine who, were so very happy that President Biden won, but on that thread they said simultaneously, but I can't believe that so many millions of people voted. This is horrible, and it's so sad and scary. It's like
that's sad and scary.
That's scary to me, because they're lumping everyone in as being insane.
And half of the I actually said this to someone I love very much the other day. I think it's so funny when people get labeled like liking one or another, when clearly there's a higher path of understanding, or at least identifying with the soul, which of course is my vow, and I know is your vow, and so many people's vow, is to let's keep talking about it and being open and having the conversation that's hard to have. The conversation that's hard to have is to hold people in a higher visual love, whether they voted for Trump or Biden, is to actually hold them as human, because half of the country basically voted for one and half voted for the other, and that's just reality. So I said to someone, are you saying that everyone who voted this way is disgusting or an idiot or all these horrible ideas and words? This is the time where we can start to maybe heal a little bit, wipe the slate clean, not because one person is voted in or not, but because it almost doesn't matter. It's almost, not as important as understanding the higher values. So if that triggers you, I understand, but
that's the reality.
That's the reality is,
in many ways,
Well, so last word, on the high note, You have come through this. I've come through this. The people in our life have come through this, and we're on the other side. And again, those universal spiritual principles and making spirituality practical. Last word on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, no matter what your belief systems are related to the world, there's still work to do internally and spiritually. And it's not just about out there. I mean, it's not just about out there. It's about in here and out there. It's not about rejecting the world and renouncing the world and not caring and, oh, I'm so spiritual that I don't care about what's happening in the world. That's not at all what I'm saying. But it's also, if we're so identified with our belief and our point of view in the world, and you're not making an effort to go deeper and see something beyond, then you're just as trapped as any, I believe, I'll speak for myself, I am just as trapped as anyone else. And, you know, that's where, you know, I believe this time we're in is also an opportunity to clear some things out, to detoxify on a lot of external levels, you know, in government and this, that, whatever, but also internally in ourselves. It's really giving us an opportunity to grow spiritually. And what does that mean? That's a big topic. What does it mean to grow spiritually? But it's a super powerful opportunity that is inspired in many ways by fear. And if we can use the fear that's present right now to inspire us to grow, we will find out that we can become fearless.
Love that.
The goal is fearless.
Goal is fearless.
But use fear to make us fearless.
Jai.
You know? So.
Amazing. Jonathan, thank you so much. I need to say that you are one of the most kind, intelligent, fearless, humble teachers and friends. And it's an absolute honor to know you. And anyone who is seeking, you're welcome, seeking a cleanse, I don't think I even said that Jonathan created the Total Life Cleanse, which hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe even thousands, I don't know, have done over the years. Jonathan's been the co-owner with his wife, Kathleen, of the Healing Essence Center for like 30 years now. And devotees and people from all over the world will come when they come to Massachusetts and get acupuncture and healing from Jonathan. So you can learn more about him, of course, at healingessencecenter.com. And it's just an honor to know you and to have this conversation. Thank you for being you.
Pleasure. Thanks for asking all the great questions.
Oh, I'm trying.
By the way, we have a cleanse starting on Wednesday.
Oh, very
Still
good.
a little room. It's on Zoom.
Awesome.
So we can
there
have,
you go.
We're not limited by space.
Oh, I love it. You'll be experiencing more of Jonathan more and more, of course, always through Jaishree Yoga and Soul Culture Yoga, as well as the Soul Mapping Matrix, I hope. And thank you all for being with us. Tomorrow is the second to last day, day 20 of Rise of the Sacred Sovereign. It's been really awesome having these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.